Awesome. I think we're good. Already good? What is happening? All right. So this is our first time. So excited to be doing this. Welcome back. First time in person for our series talk and a continuation of, y'all can't see him off screen, but Gene's talk for React Native. This is our third installment, and excited to get this kicked off. Similar things we've been doing in the past, so make sure you follow us on our socials. We have our meetings up to date on our Meetup calendar, our Luma calendar, and if you aren't already talking with the dev community, come check us out at the DevSA Discord. And those will be up for you later if you need them again. But again, I want to reiterate again, what is a series talk? It's a multi-week event, preferably one speaker. It's built to be easy to follow along for anybody. All streamed online. So our first in-person streamed online for our series talk. And then preferably the final event happens in person. So that's kind of where we can have some collaboration. People want to come and ask questions for the speaker and all that kind of fun stuff. Again, today's part 3 of 3. It's recorded live, so this is happening right now, so nothing pre-recorded. And then an open Q&A. So if y'all have questions, I'll be here in the background to help mediate for Gene as we have questions come through, or if anybody has questions why it's active. But like always in the past 2 situations so far, if you have questions after it's streamed or you're reviewing this later as pre-record or re-recorded, y'all can definitely reach out on our Discord there. But without further ado, welcome, Gene.
Okay, I can exit full screen on this, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. So again, a little bit about myself. I've been working in the industry as a software engineer for about 4-ish years now. 4 years? Yeah, 4 years now. And I've been dealing a lot in a lot of different technologies, but mostly sticking around the React framework as well as native stacks. The things that we're going to be going over today, we're going to go over two of the problems that we had last time when it came to images not loading properly, and then the flat list not rendering as expected. Both were user error, but I'll show the solutions and how I got those fixed and the simplicity of how I was able to handle the flat list. We'll go over that, and then once we're done going over those fixes, we're going to move on to navigation within a native world on mobile devices, and then we're also going to go over theme providers. So to kick us off here, I've got a quote-unquote complete app, if you will, of features that I will be showing off. So here you can see if you click on any of these Pokemon, it swipes to the left, and it provides some context here with different Pokemon I can take next and back and go back home, and I can click on any of these and see any of the information. I can also hit this toggle dark theme button. I didn't have time to really bake all of the white into black, but that context stays within the screens that I am on. And Trey is playing Europa for Sal's 4. I probably should get Steam. But anyway, so again, toggle button for toggling light and dark mode, and then navigation for moving between screens. So let's go and first look at the solution for data incoming for images. So it was 2 parts. So let me go to the Pokemon card here, and I will scroll down to this image component. And okay, so this image component is pulling from Pokemon. It's grabbing so the list of Pokemon. It's grabbing the Pokemon's ID from this being passed from the state from the incoming previous navigation screen, and then it's taking that and it's grabbing the local image URL. Now this, if I go to it, open that one. You go to the data. Source, data. Okay. So I was on the right track last time. I was just 1 folder short. So I noticed that for some reason I didn't have that last time. So obviously I was missing a route, and because I was missing that route, I didn't understand the context of the image. But as you can see here now, even my IDE understands the context of the image. So there's a bubble sort. And that kind of just repeats in the same pattern all the way down. Now, typically you would have this data coming over the line as some web endpoint from an API source or anything like that. And you would have these references come from there and fill in into like JSON, and then you would interpret it, and then you would take that data and build it. I've explicitly defined the data here, so we didn't have to worry about any of that. So it's just a kind of a fake way of utilizing some mock data. It's also a good way if you know what the endpoint data structure looks like, but you don't have access to a system. You can always mock your data and give fake values. And then usually, if you've done it one-to-one enough, whenever you're ready to connect those API systems, you have a data structure that already exists, i.e., if we go back to our types here, and you can just use this as a one-to-one representation for whatever data's coming in, and have a, I guess, what's sort of one for strictly defined object. Okay, so moving on. I have split this project up into 3 different branches. This is the main branch, so this is the complete view. The other 2 branches are demos for the context we're providing for the theme usage, and then the navigation. So I'm going to switch to the navigation branch. Second. Oh, that's it. Demo navigation. So in this branch, the theme still works. I can still click this, but none of these navigate anywhere. I'm gonna close Steam.
I'll betray later.
Okay. And you can see that I have ripped out a couple things in here. And my intention is to show you some things that you can probably do and get away with, but it would probably be more helpful if you had a package or third-party tool that already exists called React Navigation to help you actually put in. I like to think of it as the spine of the application because everything kind of branches off of that core piece of it. So here you can see I have this main screen component coming in from main screen.tsx, and it is representing all of these Pokemon here. Now, if I switch this, so say I want to get from here to another screen, so I want to instead load the Pokemon card. I call that instead. This is the other screen that I have that I want to get to, right? So how do I go between the two? Well, you could get fancy and you could say have some local state here where you have a constant and you can be like show main screen and then a set show main screen and then a use state with a Boolean value. And then you can come in here and have a fancy switcher like domain screen. And then based off that context, you can, excuse me. No, I don't want that. I want to, so IntelliSense is, or rather my AI assistant is trying to get me to use a screen navigator, which is more appropriate, but let's see. So this is going to be main screen here, and then pull from there. Actually, wait, this, and that, and then Pokemon card. So now I get rid of this and do that. So this is set to false, so it's going to show the false route. If I set this up here to true, I get that first one. So that is kind of a hand-wavy way of doing it. Obviously, if you have a lot more screens on your application, this can turn into a nightmare real quick. So you need to put that context on every single component that renders. So to get around the complexities of having to do it yourself, it's best to just pull in a third-party tool. React Navigation is the tool that we'll be using. So if I put here reactnavigation.org, this tool already exists. It works out of the box with just a little bit of setup for iOS devices. There's like absolutely no setup at all. I think you just have to rebuild the project after you install the npm packages into your project. But for Android, there is a little bit of setup. You have to actually change the context of you have to give Android reference to, I believe, the internal navigation system that it has. But other than that, everything else gets set up out of the box. So I'm going to use that here instead of this. Clear this here. And I'm going to write some code too. All right. My AI assistant is doing the work for me. So I'm just going to hit tab. And I'm going to explain each of these things that I have on screen here. So the first thing that I didn't mention is what's going on here on line 12. So in order to use these stack navigations, so there's different types of navigators you can use. This one we're using here is a stack navigator. Basically, screens will lay on top of each other. I don't know if anybody online can see me doing this with my hands, but basically I'm laying one hand on top of the other like a stack of cards. So that's why it's called a stack navigator. There's drawer navigators, there's tab navigators, all different types of navigators. So a drawer navigator kind of comes into the side and has different options going there like a menu. Tab navigators usually are on the bottom or top, depending on what you're trying to do with your app in terms of usability. But here I'm just going to use a stack navigator because all I care about is showing one screen over another, and then going back. So here on this screen, we've taken this stack and we've taken a navigation container coming from the React Navigation native library. And this is just the wrapper that you put everything inside of. So you have to have this navigation container. And then inside of that is your stack navigators and all the context for those stack navigators. And then inside of the navigator, you have a screen. So these are the screens that you want to stay on. And then we're going to actually have an initial route here. And we're going to set this initial route to main screen. So now, as you can see up here, I have a context of main screen. This is another thing that navigation does, is it gives React Navigation does, is it gives this nice header that you can either make your own custom headers or you can configure this header to look a little bit different. It gives you a lot of flexibility. I'm not going to get into that. It gets into too much of the weeds. And the amount of customization that you can do with the headers is extremely vast. But the one thing that we do want is, if I click on this, why isn't it moving? Well, because I haven't actually told this button that it needs to conduct navigation yet. So now that we've set up that, hey, here's the screens that you are aware of, now I need to tell some event to, hey, go and fetch the screen, bring it onto the stage. So let's go to screens. Let's go to, I think it's main screen here, and look at my cheat sheet. Okay. So in here, oh, and then just to kind of pull it back a minute, flat list, what happened here? So the reason it wasn't working last time is because I was overthinking it. So this data right here represents the data coming in here as Pokemon. I just recontextualized it to fit the example online. And then this render items here utilizes this function, and I can pass in an item of type any. And what I'm doing here is I'm just grabbing the context from that item. Now, this is actually very interesting because this is actually, where am I looking at here? If I remember correctly, this is, if I remove these, just playing around for a second here. These should no longer work, I think. Yeah, so that doesn't work anymore, except for the images because they're cached. So why did that break? Well, it's actually because I believe these are, yep. So what's happening here is we're using, I believe it's called JavaScript unpacking, and we're basically telling it to unpack the item and represent it as itself. So in whatever we're sending here, whatever data is coming in, it actually has a child element in it called item. And I'm just telling it, hey, these brackets here, like unpack it so I can use it more efficiently here. Otherwise, if I didn't unpack it, I'm saying, hey, just grab everything, including that item, and I need to tell item to, I need to tell whatever I call this, I could call it like blue or something, and then this would need to be blue. And then inside blue, you would have item, right? So this just gets rid of the need to unpacking right here, gets rid of the need to have additional overhead down here. So as that information comes in, this flat list parses all that data. It sends one piece of the data, or it sends the data to render items, and then render items is like, okay, for each item that I have in that list of data, I need to build out whatever is in this return block here. And I need to do that iteratively until I have no more items left. Okay, moving back on to navigation. So one of these buttons right here, I have a to, and I need to tell these buttons that, hey, you need to do some sort of navigation. So right now, if I look at my console, if I click this, it just says Bulbasaur, just says Ivysaur, or just says Charmander, because all I'm doing right now is I'm having it console like an item name. But I don't want it to just do that. I want it to do some sort of navigation. So I'm going to type navigation dot navigate. And I'm going to say, what do I want it to navigate to? I want it to navigate to Pokemon card, which was the other route that we had set up. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to pass parameters to that route. So Pokemon ID, and then I'm going to type in item.id. So this is a Pokemon that's coming in from that data set here. And then the ID is the ID representing that Pokemon. Now this is turning up red because it can't find the name navigation. Can't find that because the main screen is lacking a navigation incoming as a prop. So the reason this has to happen is if we come back here, that's where these come in. So this navigation container is providing context, which we'll get to context providers in a minute. So we made one ourselves for the theme provider, but it's providing context, and that context is passed down into here. So navigation, right? Yeah. And then it's going to yell at me unless I do this. So now this navigation has context. It knows what it's trying to reference, and it knows that it has a navigate option on it. This tells us where we're going, and this tells us what we're setting. So if I click on this now, I can go to the Pokemon. But it's not, it seems to be passing the same Pokemon every time. Now, why is that? Well, the Pokemon card screen, the Pokemon card here, by default, is only set to track this ID. So we need to do something here to make it context aware for the other Pokemon. So if I click on Bulbasaur, it's ID of 1. So this one's not right either. This seems like there's also an offset. So if I click Ivysaur, this one's correct, but all the other ones are going to just render Ivysaur because Ivysaur is at index 1. So let's change that. In here, in Pokemon card, we need to change a couple things in order to get the navigation and its properties to come in appropriately. So to access the properties of that, we go to route, and then we use the route. So this is another special property that is provided us from the context of the navigation. And this is going to hold our information that we want. So if I come down here, I can set, instead of saying Pokemon ID, set Pokemon ID to a specific hard-coded value, I can instead use route. And then this has a context for parameters. And then I can reference the Pokemon ID. So this IDE already knows what information I'm trying to get to, and it has that context. So I can just tab and finish it out. So route.params.Pokemon ID. But that takes care of our Pokemon, should take care of our Pokemon, we see. But there's an offset. So I hit Venusaur and I get Charmander, I get Ivysaur, I get Venusaur. It's an offset by 1. So we can cover that by just -1. And now we have that context. We can switch and it sends that data over, and that data is used to reference the Pokemon in our data sheet. So that covers navigation. But before I continue, any questions online? Any questions in the room? No.
What was the reason why it was 1 ahead?
It was 1 ahead because of this right here. So Pokemon ID is not the same as the array's context.
Gotcha.
So array has 0 base indexing. If I pass in 1, it's going to go to array element 2. That makes sense. So
Thank you.
Yep. Put that back the way it was. All right. Cool. We got plenty of time. All right. Let's move on to talking about the more complex thing, and that's creating our own context providers. Before I get into context providers, I'm going to switch branches. I'm going to actually get store. Status and get switch demo. What do I call that? So in this one here, I've removed for this branch. You still have the navigation, works just fine as it did before, and I can go next and back, and that still works. But we're missing the theme buttons, so that's what we're going to be implementing here. I have not completely ripped out the context provision that I wrote for this, specifically because it's a lot of code. And by a lot, I mean it's a heavy chunk, and I don't want to sit here coding that entire thing for you guys. I'd rather just talk about the important elements and code the super important parts of it. So what are context providers within the whole of React? Well, context providers are components that have context to the children that are inside of them. So you have components which can render on screen, like these buttons here. These are components. And then this entire screen here, this is all one component that I've created from scratch. But let's say I want a component to be aware of the children inside of it. This is where context providers come in to play, because, so how do I put this? Let's say I have some information that I want one component to tell another component, so that way that component can update another component. Well, I could either pass that to children indefinitely down the line and then pass it back up. But what if I want to do something complex with that data? What if I want to change some state information and I want it to be shared globally across the entire platform? Well, that's where context providers are super powerful, because if I wrap the entire app in a specific context, the entire app is going to have reference to that context, and then I can use that information across all of my components ad hoc. It's kind of like if you've ever done an Angular, it's kind of like what are they called? Documentation. If you've ever done Angular, it is like what are they called? Some of the S, I know that much. I can't remember it. Don't worry about it. Basically, if you ever need something to be done globally throughout your app, a context provider is probably your first stop. There are obviously different methods and reasons you might not want to use theme context providers. One of those is it loses reference to its information if you close the app, because you've not you've not had any way of bringing in data from the outside. You've not saved anything off of the app. It's all internal to the JavaScript in your app. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start writing that part of this. So here,
So with this context provider, you can put data in it. Can you put functions in it?
you can. Okay. Yeah, so you can share. And one thing I've done in this specific context provider is I've given it a component that it itself owns, and that component can be shared to other classes. But whenever I interact with that component, it's a button. Whenever I interact with that component, it tells the context provider, "Hey, I've changed some information. Use this information for every other screen now." So, all right. So the first thing we're going to look at is I've made this providers folder, and I've made a theme provider folder, and I made a theme context. So inside of this theme context, there's a couple different things. Up here, I have pulled in React. I've pulled in create context and use state. These are normal React things. This is not specifically anything for React Native. React Native is only being used here for our button and a little bit of text for representation on that button. I've created an interface data object type custom type theme context type where I am giving it some variables here. So I have an isDark theme of type Boolean. I have a toggle theme of type function call, or rather callback. And then so I can basically do whatever I want with this. And then colors of color data. And the color data is what we're using. The color data and isDark theme are very powerful because if I want to just check to see if the theme is dark, I can just use this. Or if I want to just use the explicit colors, switch space on context, I have those here. And I'll show where those are being filled in, but I've defined them down here. So I have light colors and I have dark colors, and they're just literally flipped. Background and text are flipped. Moving on up. I've also defined another interface, colors data. This one's being exported because I do use this value elsewhere within the code. And it has a background and a text, and both of these are strings. And if you look down here, these, if I put in here color data, these are of that type, or should be of that. So I like things very explicit. Okay. Theme context. So we have to make use of the create context function, and we have to put in what data it's going to be representing for that context. And it has the potential of being undefined. And matter of fact, it is undefined here. We establish it as being undefined. So here under we create a use theme. So this is a hook. This is a custom hook that we're making here. And what this hook does is it allows us to access the important aspects of what we're setting up here, and it allows us to do context switching. So basically, in order to interact with any of this information, I have to use this hook, and I have to put this hook inside of each component in order to get to this data that is globally shared. So here I'm saying if context, I have a context of constant, and I'm setting the use context of theme context here. So that's how we establish that. And then coming down here, if no context, then we throw an error. Use theme must be used within the theme provider. So theme providers can be wrapping our application. If we try to use this hook outside of anything outside of the application, it'll throw this error. Because unless it's nested within those, it doesn't have any understanding of what this is, or what the data is being represented here. Okay. So that's one part. So this is the part that we're going to be ingesting, but we also have another part. We have the provider part. So we have to export another constant. And this time, instead of it exporting a function that's a hook, we're exporting a actual component. And the component that we're exporting is going to be written here It's not this small, I promise. It's got actual meat inside of it. Go to that specific page. And you will move on. Here it is. All right. So the first things we need to do is we need to establish actual information for these three values. And in order to do that, we are going to use state information. So I'm going to set up a constant, and I'm going to say is, again, artificial intelligence kind of saving the day here. So here we have an is dark theme and a set dark theme. So this is a standard use state from React. It's of type Boolean, and we're passing in a false. So its initial value will be set to false, and that will set this up to be false upon application start. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to have another one, and we're going to set this we're going to set this as the toggle theme. And this toggle theme is just going to be a callback function to set is dark theme, which sets this value here, and it's going to be the inverse of whatever the dark theme is. So next, after that, we have another, and this one we're setting the actual theme itself. So here I'm going to set a theme, and I'm going to set this as is dark theme. I'm going to set toggle theme, and then I'm going to set colors. And these colors, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make use of this state information. And I'm going to have a ternary either return a dark colors if it's true, otherwise light colors if it's false. Okay. And then in this return block here, we are going to remove these empty parts, and we're going to return a theme context dot provider. And the value that we're going to be returning here is the type theme. And we need to inform the children. Parents need to inform the children. So this is how, this right here is how we get to the children elements. Excuse me. And this is of type react.react. So it unpacks it, and then we can reference the children here. So anywhere this theme provider is used, it gets replaced with this context, and then the children get put inside of here. Nicely packed together. Okay, so that covers the theme provider. Down here, the only thing that's down here is a theme toggle button, which isn't being used anywhere at this time, but it will be used. So this button, the only thing that this button does, is whenever you press it, it uses this toggle theme toggle theme. And toggle theme is coming from the use theme hook, and that is calling this. That has been set up as a function call, but we've already established in here that all that this does is we pointed to flip this Boolean value from true to false. So what's happening is we press this button, we call this callback function. It's like, hey, go flip the values, please, and then report back to me with whatever. So then this goes from true to false because of that context. And we can reference that anywhere on our code. So let's go make use of it. See that real quick. And second, we are going to go back to, in order to get this to work properly, we have to wrap our entire application in the provider. All right. So in app.tsx, underneath the navigation container, before I use the stacks, I'm going to set the theme provider. And I'm going to, oops. And then I'm going to to add these. So now this theme provider is wrapping this navigational stack. The navigational stack is what's controlling our flow here. So everything that we have in our app is nested underneath this umbrella. So I should be able to pass that information that the theme provider has to any of these screens and any of these buttons that I've created. So let's go to this is a Pokemon card. Let's not do Pokemon card. Let's do this home page first. So this is main provider. Okay. Main screen. So the first thing I need to do in main screen is I need to update my imports. So here I'm going to pull in an import, and I'm going to pull in the use theme hook from the theme provider's theme context. A couple more things here that I will be importing in a minute, but I will show you guys how to set up the use theme first. So the use theme hook is typically the first thing that you want in your function or in your component to be called. So I'm going to say const here, and I'm going to say colors, and I'm unpacking that from use theme. So again, this is unpacking. So if I wanted to, I could instead say theme reference, and then I can say theme reference.colors, or I could do theme reference.isDarkTheme, and that's the Boolean value, right? But instead of doing that, to give us less overhead, we unpack it. So we know that this thing has colors in it. We know this thing has isDarkTheme, and we also know this thing has a toggle theme callback. Technically don't need all that right now. I just want to make use of colors. So now that I have colors here, I want to pass that data into the style sheet. So in here, I'm going to make a new concept. I'm going to call this styles. Now I'm going to make a new style sheet. So I'm going to call this one get styles, and I'm going to pass in colors. So here, get styles doesn't exist. I explicitly removed it for just such an occasion. And down here, before we do this other style sheet, I'm going to make another style sheet called get styles. And I'm going to pass in colors of type any. Typically, I would try to find out what explicit. Actually, I think it says colors data. This. Okay. And then here, I would say, okay, now that I have that information, let's go create a style sheet. And I'm going to make a container here. And that container style information is going to contain a background color, that type of the colors, and so colors background, reference the theme there, and then the color. So this you use color for text objects. We're going to set that to colors dot text. Okay, that should take care of that. Now I have this style sheet that I can use. And what I'm going to do with this is I am going to, excuse me, color, and then set that. Right there. So here, I'm going to pass in a style attribute, and I'm going to say styles dot. Styles dot container to reference this container. So when I save that, it's still white, but that's because we are in light mode. Remember that button that I said that was provided inside of here, this theme toggle button. I can actually import it into here. Theme toggle button. And now if I reference it in my user interface, I have it right above the flat list in this code. Let me do theme toggle button, reference that component. If I save that, I can now click this button and it changes my colors. If I, to show you that this isn't just some trick, I will remove the colors background here, and I will change this to just black for now. And you can see that changes black, and if I hit this, the background no longer changes. So real quick, to think about what exactly is happening here. I click on this button. Once I click on this, since it's referenced here, I click on it. This has its own logic inside of it to tell the theme context. So if I look up here. So here we go. So this is just a snippet of possible that's that has an on press. Don't worry about all this. It's just some styling that I gave it. And then the on press is again flipping that boolean. But what's happening is whenever that boolean is flipped, since everything else is using a hook now, the hook's like, hey, I have some information that has updated. Re-render your page. So boop, re-render, boop, re-render. Depending on how you build this, it can get computationally expensive, especially if you have a lot of re-renders. So again, context provider is not useful for everything, but useful for some things. Say, again, if I want to take some information from one component and pass it up the tree and pass it right down. Very useful. More useful. So say I have a parent that has a child that has a child that has a child that has a child that has a child, and this child wants to tell the first generation child that something happened. Are you really going to pass all that information down and then back up the children, or you want to say, hey, you over there, go tell him? It's much easier. Okay. So now the cool part about this is this is global. This is app wide. I can click on one of these, and you'll see this is still white background, but that's because I haven't told this component to use the hook yet. So if I go to the Pokemon card, and I now want to update that, so let me use my cheat sheet one more time, please. Give me a second. Okay, so we are going to import a couple things. We're going to import the theme toggle button. And we are okay, we're going to do the theme toggle button, and then we're also going to import the use theme hook. So this time, instead of pulling in the colors, I am going to pull in the boolean is dark theme that is being represented by use theme. Again, this is one of three three reference variables that we can use. And instead of using the colors, I am going to one second. Use theme. Okay, so now I want to pass this boolean into this style sheet here. So I'm going to do is dark theme. So that's going to pass in this as well as this variable here. And I need to update this styles to accept this secondary object or secondary variable parameter arguments, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to also call this is dark theme, and I'm going to represent this as a type boolean. The reason I'm putting it on this side instead of on this side is because optional parameters have to go on the right side. Otherwise, TypeScript gets upset. Okay. So now that I've got the hook set up, and the hook is tracking this information, and that information is being passed into the style sheet effectively, now I can make use of that here. So instead of using container background color, okay. So here, I'm going to say container, not container, sorry, background color, and I'm going to ask it a question. I'm going to say, is the dark theme set up? If so, then use black. Otherwise, use Web. Okay. And now you can see that automatically live updated because the hook is there. It recognized that I am using that information in the style sheet, and it's already been set up to track. It's already been set up to true, so it's tracking dark. So go back and hit this, and then go back again. It's white. But that's not all that we could do. I have to go back here, put this, come in here, and then see the change, right? Well, what if I, want to change it on this page too? Well, I can take that toggle button that I had. I can represent it. I'm going to put it on the bottom here since I have more real estate down there. View. Toggle button. And now since I represent this here, I can put this and it'll change it back to white. And that. So basically, you can see the power here. Like, I can have these components be controlled in this context provider or built in this context provider. I can share them with other components, and then I can have that state be shared, or the information that I'm doing with that on these different screens be shared across the application. So hit this dark, hit this light, go back, should change the light again. So
That seems like that would irritate the user with that toggle moving around.
yes, this is not a well-designed application. I will not admit, I will not say that this is anywhere near well-designed. The sole purpose of this was to show you guys the power of these tools and how you can use them to manipulate information across different screens. But I would not build an app for this. The only reason I built it app, like I was screaming at myself whenever I built this the other day. So
This is not a UI UX course.
no, it is not. And I'm pretty sure if my UI UX friends saw this, they would scream. Screw that one. Questions? All right, 10 minutes here.
Would you like a pedantic nitpick?
Oh, please, absolutely.
So what you call unpacking, I think is officially called destructuring.
Destructure, thank you. I can never remember the terms.
I was gonna say it too, but I don't want to call you out.
No, call me out, please. Being wrong is half the reason I'm in this industry.
But you weren't wrong. That's the process of it. It's just the overall
We're just-
thing is called
You're
destructuring.
just using slang.
Yeah, it's slang.
There we go. Yeah, so that's destructuring, not unpacking. This right here. Destructuring. Same as on the other page.
So in your sense of context, you hear things in the industry too, things like Redux and all this other stuff to help manage memory or state. I know context is like built into JavaScript for most of it. What's the benefit over using what's built into JavaScript to using these third-party libraries?
So Redux Redux explicitly allows you to save information to your phone, so that way you don't have to. So let's say this is all based on the app. So if I was to close this app, let's say I put this in. Let's go ahead and put this in dark mode, and then I close the app, and then I open the app back up. It's going to be in light mode again. Redux allows you to, if I was to click this button and Redux was configured properly, it would save that information to the phone. And then whenever I close this app and reopen it, if I set the code up to grab the state information from the phone before it renders anything, then I would have that information be reloaded into all its context. So there is a use case for that stuff. React Native, as far as I'm aware, does not yet have the ability to just save to the phone directly. The third-party the Redux library allows you to do that. And there's other packages. I've not used them. I'm more familiar with Redux. But yeah, that's your question.
Yeah, so it's just more the state of like it's caching to the phone directly instead of its individual sessions each time of the app's life.
Like if you were doing this in web development, you can think of this as you saving a cookie that gets wiped every time your session is for your session cookie. Versus saving to how do you save to
Local storage.
local storage? Yeah. So if you were using Redux, that's more like saving the local storage. But the overhead if you've ever used Redux before, the overhead is annoying. Like, which we can have a talk on if we want, but I didn't have time for it. So. Other questions? No? Well, that's all I have, and I hope that somebody found this enlightening.
Thank you, Gene.
Yeah.
You want me to just, go?
Really?
Android is so ambiguous with its how you build things out. Like it's like
Because Android's more a specific platform rather than React Native being a wide platform,
Yeah.
right? Like, but then you have your pitfalls for each, right? So yeah.
the Android structure is I'm learning is a lot more similar to a typical what's it called?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm starting to see similarities there on Java side or Kotlin side of Android, but it feels more like a Unity experience
Mm.
than it does. And then there's also Super, which is weird as well.
It's always very different. It just depends on like I think it just comes down to scenarios. You know, you deal with it with what the product's supposed to be or supposed to create. So
I expect unlimited control of whatever I'm interacting with, and I don't have to think about like the core functionality of the system. I want to just do what I need to do with that lifecycle of it.
yeah.
And then when Android comes around, they're like, oh, you can use the lifecycle hook, but you have to tell it to have the base, like the base, what's it called? You can't just override, like, you can override on creating whenever you create it, or let's read.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just say, hey, this is what I want, this is what I need to override your original lifetime hook. You need to tell it, oh, by the way, don't forget your core functionality. That's for super.
Yeah.
So I think in general, when you override methods, you should practice calls just in case there's something important. Yeah, in the context of C moderators, I don't have to, I never have to tell it.
Not that you don't ever have to, but
I think that might be a feature of those languages.
yeah.
But in Java, in Java, that's by default, that's what you should be doing, unless you know that you don't want to do it. And it's firewall, what you should be doing by integrate into the language. Why I have to execute Java? Why I have to why question for what's a question for the people inside the language.
Malik and Realik. I know. That's funny. Okay, well that's fun. Sometimes you don't care. Let it stay. Let the user deal with it. But hey, thanks. I'll probably edit that part out because I don't know how much of the online actually heard. But yeah, no, you're fine. No, we're just chatting. But yeah, thanks for coming to our final installment of Gene's React Native Series Talk. I want to give a big shout out to our partners in the community, TechBlock for helping fund a lot of this, and Project Cowork for helping us provide spaces not only for today's meeting but previous meetings we've been having in the community. Super excited to have them as part of us and a part of us being a part of the community itself. Super excited to keep building with them. As we said last time, if you want to give a talk or you have an idea for a series talk, we have a medium. We have an audience. We have people that are interested. So if you want yourself to have a online stream or something like that, or in-person talk, totally can help facilitate some of that with you. Probably alongside DevSA and a lot of the other communities here in San Antonio as well. Jesse talked recently coming up. He's been in a podcast. He got name dropped. Some other upcoming stuff happening here in San Antonio. Check out some stuff happening. Today is the 5th. So this weekend, Alamo City Locksport. Next Thursday, our partner Tech Block is having a big community launch rally, so make sure to check them out, as well as some other items happening. I probably won't talk to all of them, but they're here on the screen for you if you want to check them out. Definitely check out the DevSA and Tech Block Luma calendars. Those will be available there if you're looking for more information on those events. Again, if you don't already follow us on our social medias, we have our meetups and our calendars set here on Meetup and Luma. And again, if you're looking for conversations or looking to be a part of the community, join us over on the DevSA Discord. But with that being said, thanks for coming out. Thanks for listening. If you're listening to the recording, thanks for following along. If y'all have any questions for Gene or myself or the org, meet us up in the ACM SA Discord. Thank you, everybody.